Hi, everyone. Welcome to your emotional toolkit. My name is Lauren Lopriori, and I am here to introduce our amazing speaker. I'd like to introduce Joy Simha. Joy practices DBT and CBT therapy at Turn the Mind, helping clients manage anxiety, depression, personality disorder, and bipolar diagnosis. Joy co-founded the Young Survival Coalition. She sits on the integration panel of the Department of Defense Breast Cancer Research Program as a patient advocate. And Joy served on the CDC Advisory Committee on Breast Cancer in young women and various panels for the Institute of Medicine. Her passion is helping others find their advocacy voice. And now I will turn it over to Joy.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate the introduction, and I'm so humbled to be here with incredible women who are attending this conference. The mindfulness that we saw in the plenary session just now, Amelia Caferno did an amazing job, and that's part of what we're going to talk about here today. Just to share with you, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1994, and it's been quite a journey. And I spend a great deal of my advocacy time doing advocacy work on the Department of Defense Breast Cancer Research Program. But more recently, I went back and I got my master's in social work because I saw that so many women were using Dr. Google and Dr. Facebook to help figure out how to fight their disease. And I remembered that when I was diagnosed, there was a social worker at Sloan Kettering who really helped me through the entire process. And they helped me make meaningful decisions based on facts and evidence, and decisions that were right for me personally. So it was my aspiration to really try to figure out if there was a way that getting a master's in social work would help me to help other women figure out the best path forward in planning their cancer journey. So I'm going to share my screen if I'm smart enough to do this. Forgive me for my lack of technology, but let's just hopefully give me a nod if you can see that. Do you guys see my screen? My slides? Yes. No? Lauren? Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So hopefully I'll give you a little emotional toolbox and moving forward. So the therapy that I practice currently is called dialectical behavioral therapy. And basically, just to give you a little information about DBT, when we talk about dialectics, we're talking about two things that can be true at the same time. And dialectics really embrace a couple of principles that I'm going to kind of go through. And it's about, taking an effort to mindfully, realistically assess your challenges, figure out how to manage your emotions moving forward so that you can tolerate distress and solve your problems without making your problems bigger. It's about learning how to communicate more effectively with the key people who are also involved in your journey. And you do all this so that you can live the most meaningful life moving forward. Everything that I'm talking about today, I've read in this book, Coping with Cancer, DBT Skills to Manage Your Emotions and Balance Uncertainty with Hope. And I discovered this book just in the last year, but it was published a while ago. And it resonated for me as I read the book because I thought, wow, 27 years ago when I was trying to find a way through breast cancer, I was using DBT skills, but I didn't know what they were. So if what I'm saying to you today resonates for you, I hope you will purchase this book. It was like $11 or $12 to get a digital copy of it. So, and I'm certain if what I'm saying resonates, it'll be a pretty easy read for you and hopefully helpful. And I have no skin in the game. I don't get any money from anyone who buys that book. But Marsha Linehan, one of the co-authors, is the person who developed this therapy. The therapy came out of cognitive behavioral therapy. And as I said before, dialectics are simply about recognizing when two things that seem to be opposite can both be true at the same time. So with regard to cancer, I oftentimes will think of a friend of mine, Tracy Pleva Hill, who was caught on video saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, but these tiny little cancer cells are trying to kill me. And I think that, it can be very true when you're having a pretty good day and you're physically feeling really well, and the doctor tells you you have cancer. And all of a sudden you become aware of this unknown, unseeable threat inside your body. And other dialectics that can be true is that you can feel weak and act strong at the same time, right? And it's possible to be frightened and have hope at the same time. You're coping to the best of your ability right now, but maybe if you had more skills, you could cope better. So also paying homage to a friend of mine, Randy Rosenberg, who was on the very first board of directors of the Young Survival Coalition, and who has since passed away. But I think of her often when I think about, and both is true, and both can be true. And in simply accepting that sometimes two things can be true at once, we call that radical acceptance. But you can kind of find some comfort in the fact that these two things can be true at once. So I want to take just a quick minute. Actually, Talina, is it possible for us to run the poll, or do I have to stop sharing for us to do that? Poll came up. Okay, so really quickly, I just want to get a sense of who's in the room. So if you could answer quickly, which phrase best describes your current treatment status right now? And let us know where you are at. That would be awesome. And it's funny because, like, for me, none of the above are true. And if you prefer not to answer, that's perfectly fine too. Because for me, I was diagnosed 27 years ago, and I just realized, I guess I'm post-treatment, but I don't consider myself post-treatment because it was even so far away. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's just how you most easily identify. So we have a lot of women in the room who are primary diagnosis and treatment. Is it for me to end the poll, or we have a couple of people who are living with metastatic breast cancer? We could share the results, I think, if everyone's done participating. Okay, good. So here's the results, just so we all know who's in the room. It's really super, super helpful to me. And if 48% of you are post-treatment, it's interesting that you're still looking for an emotional toolbox, because cancer is still, part of our lives, right? So I'm going to stop sharing that. Is that for Nita, or is this you, Talina, or me? Talina? Did we share results? So do I just close this bar? Is that what I do? Okay. All right, good. All right.
You should be good. You should be good.
Okay. And now okay. So, you guys are really, okay, good, sorry. Mindfulness. So if you were in the main session, you were practicing mindfulness. And I have to tell you, mindfulness is super, super helpful. It's super, super wonderful tool in DBT because it helps us slow things down. It helps us take a minute to observe what we're feeling, right? She was saying, just take a minute to observe the sensations in your body without judging. Just observe and describe in your head, and participate do one thing at a time mindfully. Hopefully you were able to do that mindfulness without being completely distracted by other things in your house or other things on screen, because doing that helps you to just slow things down and stay in the moment. So mindfulness is like our number one tool that we like to teach people so that they can really figure out how to just slow things down. Um, and that helps us to manage our emotions better. Now, yesterday in the main session, there was a little bit of debate about, you remember, one of the speakers said, when you're feeling sad, try not to feel sad, try to distract yourself and do something else. And someone else said, no, give yourself the right to feel that emotion. Emotions are really, really important. And it's important for you to feel your emotion, recognize the emotion, name the emotion. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling sad. Recognize it, validate it, allow it. Because we know that when you block your emotions, that actually intensifies them. You actually, scientifically, we know that you only feel an emotion for about 90 seconds. So if you can engage in mindfulness for 2 minutes, I invite you to conduct your very own experiment with yourself, right? So at any given time when you're feeling a strong emotion, rate it on a scale. I'm angry. And on a scale of 1 to 10, this is like a 7. I'm really, really angry at so and so for doing that. And then try to conduct some mindfulness. It can be very simple. Some paced breathing, a little bit of the tense and release that Amelia was doing, or even inhale, hold it, exhale, inhale, hold it, exhale. Set a timer, do it for 2 minutes. If you can give yourself 5 minutes, all the better. And then after you conduct that mindfulness, ask yourself, now how strong is the emotion? And see if you figured out a way to manage the emotion, to bring the emotion from a 7 to a 5 or even a 2. And just see, does that work for me? Right? Not feeling the emotion, avoiding the emotion can give you a negative feedback loop. So that frustration that you're feeling because the doctor isn't calling when he said he would call, that could lead to anxiety. He's not calling me because he doesn't want to tell me bad news. He's not calling me because the news he has to tell me, is going to throw me over the edge. Or, I'm angry because he's not calling, doesn't pay attention to me the way he pays attention to other people. And the frustration could lead to sadness or disappointment or judgment of myself. Why do I always get frustrated? Why do I always end up in this deep, deep emotion? Whereas, so all those things are judgments that take the frustration to a whole other level of anxiety, anger, sadness, and other intense negative emotions. Worry thoughts can lead to more frightening and anxious thoughts. And that spirals into a panic over things you might fear. And so if you can withhold the judgments and just allow yourself to feel the emotion, we know that mindfulness, that pausing, that slowing things down will help the very, very strong emotion that you're feeling. So this is one way to regulate your emotion. We know that observing your emotional experience is an excellent way to validate that emotion. Allow yourself to feel it, and really notice, what am I feeling? And is this a feeling I feel often? And just really sit with it for a little bit. Describe the experience by naming the emotion that you're feeling is maybe taking control of you and you'd like to take back the control. And then try to understand a little bit about what might have prompted that emotion. Identify the physical sensations that you're feeling. And notice when you make a judgment, but call it a judgment. Say, well, that's a judgment, that's a thought, but am I making an assumption? And then I'd like you to check the facts. Ask yourself, just because I'm anxious right now, I know that I've been anxious before and the feelings passed, and probably this anxiety will pass too. So it's not something that I'm always feeling. I'm having a bad moment. And if the anxiety has led to anger, check the facts about whether the situation really warrants the secondary emotion. Are you assuming a threat? Or is there a real bear chasing you? So emotions have a really important purpose. They prompt you to do things. I have a pain in my head. I'm worried. I'm worried that I have a symptom that I need to run by my doctor. So maybe I need to call the doctor now. So it's that fear that prompts you to action. And so we need to be aware of whether the fear is a rational fear, and that by calling the doctor, he can order a test and I can better understand whether this headache that I've had for 3 days is really something I need to worry about, or am I just taking the wrong painkiller, right? So you need to sort of figure out if you can slow things down, feel it, become aware of it, and consider what other possible perspectives need to be considered. And we always say when you're feeling a very strong emotion, if you're angry, sometimes we want to lash out at people around us, right? But maybe we need to consider that if we slow things down and don't say anything at all for now, that might be more in my best interest than lashing out at the people around us who are there to help us. So the book deals specifically with fear, anxiety, grief, and anger. It's just known that when you name an emotion, notice it, don't judge it, and stay in the present with it. Observe the present. Observe what you're feeling and what you're thinking. Discern the difference. I'm feeling anger. I'm angry because I feel like nobody's supporting me in the way that I need support. But is that true? Is that, observe what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And I just judged. Is that true? Oh, I just judged. Notice when you judge. And don't judge the judging. Oh, you're bad because you judged, right? Just notice. It's also really, really important. One of the principles of DBT is that, this very moment that I'm in right now is painful enough. I can't worry about the past, and worrying about the fact that I may never be better in the future, that's only making this very moment worse. So try to observe this very moment, not worry about the past or the future, because right now, right here, this is the bite. This is what I need to chew. I don't eat a pizza, one pizza at a time. I eat it one bite at a time, right? So whatever emotion, whatever worry I'm having right now is enough for me to worry about. And if you can, there are some amazing mindfulness YouTube videos that help you just notice your thoughts. You can watch them float down a river. You can watch them, come in with an ocean wave and float back out to sea. You can watch it, notice it. It's a thought. It's a scary thought. And I'm just watching it float out to sea because it's just a thought. It has no power unless I really act on it, right? So, as I said, here are some helpful skills to use. Paced breathing is one. where you're inhaling to the count of 5 or 6, you're holding it for a beat, and you're exhaling to the count of 7 or 8. The exhale is always slightly longer than the inhale. Set a timer and do that for maybe 5 minutes if you have it, if not 2 minutes. 2 minutes will help a strong emotion dissolve. You can also observe objects around you. Just set a timer and spend 5 minutes naming everything on your desk. Just notice things around you. That's mindfulness. The deep breathing that I showed you with my fingers. And then some people do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel with your hands, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing maybe you can taste. Maybe it's not in your mouth right now, but you're thinking about tasting it. Something else that's really, really helpful when you're feeling a strong emotion and mindfulness isn't helping is to do opposite action. So, for example, you're so anxious that you just want to hide under the sheets, don't want to get out of bed. Do opposite action. Just try it, because what you're feeling in bed isn't helpful. It's only getting worse in bed. So when things start to get worse, sometimes the best thing you can do is the exact opposite of what you want to do. Get out of bed and take a shower, you know? Make your bed. Get out of bed and make your bed. Or get out of bed and take a walk. Distraction is truly, truly amazingly helpful. You know, when you just want to hide and do nothing, sing at the top of your lungs. Watch a comedy, watch something that you know will make you laugh, or journal about what you're feeling to just gain some sort of other perspective, perhaps. This was essential to me when I was diagnosed with breast cancer initially. I remember thinking, like, the biopsy report isn't back yet, and I need to, I'm so worried about it, but worrying about it isn't going to change it. Like, the cells are already taken. They have to look at those cells. So I really have to give it up to a higher power. And I wasn't even sure if I believed in God at that time. But I knew there was a higher power that I had to give it up to. And another friend shared with me that she simply filled a pitcher of water and flushed it down the toilet and imagined all of her worries going down the toilet. So whatever you can do to, if you're worrying about something that, worrying about it is not going to change it, whatever you can do to visually try to send it off to someone else to worry about, basically, can be helpful to some people. Most importantly, though, you need to allow yourself to feel the feelings you're feeling and validate them, and know that yesterday you were happy. So hopefully tomorrow you can be happy again. Or if you allow yourself to feel this feeling for 5 minutes, perhaps that feeling will pass. Something that always resonated for me, another way to look at dialectics, is that I got this from the movie Shadowlands. I don't know. I hope some of you have had the benefit of seeing that movie. It tells the story of T.S. Eliot and his wife. His wife is diagnosed with cancer, and she does end up at the end of the movie passing away from the disease. But she tells him in the middle of the movie when she wants to talk about dying and he does not. And she says, the happiness now is part of the sadness later. That's the deal. And as the movie ends, he's closing the window. Anthony Hopkins is in this movie, by the way. And he says, Anthony Hopkins closing the window, and he says, the pain I feel now is part of the happiness I felt then. So if you can know that the happiness is made more precious by our struggles in life, by our sadness. And hopefully, if you're feeling a difficult emotion now, if you can be patient with it and know that eventually that emotion does have the ability to change and fade, but it's part of the sadness. It's made more precious because of the sadness we feel in life. Sometimes we just have to give ourselves encouraging messages, right? Amelia tried to guide us through some encouraging messages in the main session. And, people would ask me when I was going through treatment and through diagnosis, how are you feeling now? And I found it a very difficult question to answer because I said, I don't have a lot of bad days, but I have a lot of bad moments within my good days. And so it was comforting to me to really understand that this is a bad moment now. I'm scared. I have the strength to cope with it until it passes. And I'm just going to be really patient with myself in this bad moment. Sometimes it's comforting to say, I'm learning skills to help me cope better. And, this awful feeling in the pit of my stomach is meant to make me take action in some way. Do I need to call a doctor? Do I need to do some research? Do I need to figure this thing out? Do I need to talk to a friend? Let me make a list, of what I need to do and what will be helpful for me. And if it's calling a doctor, maybe I need to make a list of my questions so that when I call the doctor, I feel like I've taken control of this very moment. My pounding heart is my body giving me energy and courage to deal with this challenge. So sometimes, like Amelia was trying to guide us into being really aware of what was going on in our body, right? Sometimes when you allow yourself to sit with an emotion, it gives yourself the chance to slow it down and say, I'm really angry. My heart is pounding because I'm angry. My neck feels all stressed because I really do. I want to beat somebody, um, and to just ask yourself, what do I need in this very moment? How can I slow down this pounding heart? Will my paced breathing help me slow down this pounding heart? We always need to depend on our friends, right? Like we all know one of the unbelievable things about this summit is that we know there's so many people like us who are struggling with the same things, and reaching out to those people and staying a community has really been so important ever since this organization was co-founded in 1998. Like it's the reason we're still here together is because we need each other, people. We need each other. So, always remembering the encouraging messaging. For me, I constantly had to remember that worrying about the test results or the cancer cells going to, continue to ravage my body. Was I going to be able to fight this disease? Worrying about that didn't make anything better. And so for some reason, just that notion alone helped me to slow things down. This is something very, very true about dialectical behavioral therapy. So everybody has three minds. We have reasonable mind. Reasonable mind is cool, rational, and task focused. It's my favorite mind. It's where I spend most of my time, and it's probably the most frustrating thing in my relationships because other people that I know and love spend a lot of time in emotion mind. It's hot, it's mood dependent, it's emotion focused, and when you are feeling a very, very strong emotion, 9 times out of 10, you are in emotion mind. And in DBT therapy, we like to say, do not make any decisions, any important decisions when you are in emotion mind, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to regret that decision. But what we like people to do is take parts of reason mind and parts of emotion mind and bring them together to find wise mind, which really is the wisdom and the middle path inside of you. It's intrinsically inside of you. And anything you can do to access wise mind before making a permanent decision will only benefit you in the long run. Mindfulness definitely helps you achieve wise mind. So this whole notion of radical acceptance, when you have a problem, like a disease you've been diagnosed with, right? You want to hide. I remember wanting to hide. I remember not wanting to get up, not wanting to go to treatment. And the problem with that is then the disease has won, right? So you radically have to accept that you have this problem that you have to solve. That is the first step in solving the problem. And, Randy Pausch is famous for this quote: you cannot change the cards you are dealt. It's just the only thing you can change is how you played the hand. And we must let go of the life we've planned so that we can accept the one that is waiting for us. And doing the best you can until you know better, because when you know better, you can do better. That's my favorite, my identity approach. This can be helpful whenever you're feeling a strong emotion or pain. It's essentially a step down from, why have I lost that word? Needles. Is Annie Appleseed in the room?
Acupuncture?
Yes, acupuncture. Thank you. It's a step down from acupuncture. It's called tapping. So if you have a strong emotion that you're dealing with or a pain, right? I'm going to invite you to think about your biggest problem right now, whether that be a physical pain or an emotion. And you basically, say to yourself, I'm thinking about how my neck hurts. I'm thinking about how my neck hurts. And you begin tapping. You start at the top of your head. And then you bring it to your third eye. I'm thinking about how my neck hurts. I'm thinking about how my neck hurts. And then to your inner brow, which is hard when you wear glasses. I'm thinking about how my neck hurts. I'm thinking about how my neck hurts. You can go all the way down. Go to the side of your eye. You go under your eye. I'm thinking about how my neck hurts. I'm thinking about. And by going through this one by one, your chin, under your chin, I'm thinking about how my neck hurts. Thinking about how my neck hurts. Your inner collarbone, I'm thinking about how my neck hurts. Thinking about how my neck hurts. And your under armpit, it's actually, if you're a woman, it's right where your bra strap is. If you're a man, it's kind of like right around where your nipple might be or was, and you're tapping under your armpit. And then there's this part of our hand that is the karate chop position. I'm thinking about how my neck hurts. I'm thinking about how my neck hurts. And then, if you would, you hold the skin right between your pinky and your ring finger on one of your hands, and you just gently touch that gamut point for a few seconds. And then you notice, did I bring, like when I started, was my neck was hurting about 5 out of 10. Did I bring it down? Did I do anything to bring it down? Did any of this tapping help? And probably in this general session, because I didn't, you really need to do it quietly, and you need to focus on what's particularly bothering you. But if you start out by naming and labeling the problem, and sort of judging. It's bothering me on a scale of 1 to 10. It's a 7. Can I bring it down to a 5 or a 2? Um, and see if the tapping is helpful to you. DBT has all sorts of skills that teach people to communicate constructively. Um, this helps us to make known what we need with our family, with our friends, colleagues, medical providers, so that you can get what you need while protecting your relationships and your self respect. And as Brene Brown says, when you dare to set boundaries, you have the courage to love yourself, even though you might risk disappointing others. But it's really important to stay true to yourself, right? Oh my goodness. So this is my contact information. If you want to contact me again to, discuss any of this further or get more information, I'm happy to help with that. And that's the bulk of my presentation. I'm hoping there's some questions in the chat. I don't know,
Yeah.
Lauren.
Yeah, Joy, thank you so much for that. I definitely know I took a lot out of that, for sure. And so yes, we have a few questions, and the first one is, can you give some YouTube resources on mindfulness that you mentioned at the beginning of the session?
I can. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I'm wondering if there's a way we can publish them later. I like to look for, there's an amazing one called The Inner Staircase. And there are a lot of 5 to 10 minute videos that will guide you to go to the very core of your being and help you really figure out what it is that you're feeling. So if you were to Google inner staircase and DBT, that would come up for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then let's see, we have, how do we open up to our providers or care team that we need mental health help?
Oh, that's a really good question. So oftentimes many cancer centers have social workers, and sometimes you just need to ask for a referral to they usually come free with treatment. But getting mental health care in our society has been our greatest challenge, hasn't it? I mean, it's very, very difficult. So that is a really good question, and I wish I had the answer to it. It's it, it's one of the most difficult parts of our society, I think. I don't know, Lauren, do you have any insight into, I mean, it's a big problem.
Yeah, no, I think you answered that correctly. I think it's really just being as open as you can when you are speaking with your provider. I mean, it's so hard to go in and, you're wanting to focus on, your appointment at hand. And, I think, maybe just having like a little notebook every time you kind of feel certain things, and being able to like bring that to, your appointments with you. Because I think, what I've learned as a breast cancer survivor as well is that, your providers, not that they don't care about the future steps, but they're so focused like on the initial or what their care is for you, whether or not it's surgery or radiation or chemotherapy. And, it's just really important to, keep that open dialogue with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember when I went back to my oncologist after 2 years of the end of my treatment, just for a regular follow-up, and I was asking her all sorts of questions. I was really worried that, cancer was coming to get me again. And she said to me, "Oh man, Joy, I really think you need to go see a psychiatrist and get a prescription, because you're more anxious now than you ever were when you were in treatment with me. And I said to her, but like, I get anxious 3 days before I come to see you. And then when you tell me I'm fine, I'm better. So it is about like keeping the balance and having that open and honest conversation with your caregiver. And I really think that one of the biggest challenges too is physicians, they do think that like a prescription is going to solve all your problems. And look, for some people a prescription is going to solve a good part of the problem, but if you can try to address your problems behaviorally first and you can't solve them, then you can ask for a prescription. But I really think like our first line of defense ought to be um, behavioral intervention, and really, noticing the thoughts you're having, noticing the emotions you're having, and checking the facts. Those are like going to be essential.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to call out too, that Adrian mentioned here. My therapist had me create a list called things that I know are true. The list is on my phone. And when I'm feeling overwhelmed and can't remember these tools, I pull up the list. So I think, we all have our phones on us. And so, keeping track of the way we feel and those questions that we have, just helps to remind us that, each appointment is not just about the exam or being anxious, and we all are going to feel that way, and there's nothing wrong with that, but remembering to advocate for ourselves and is really important. So yeah, keeping
Yeah.
those logs is really important.
Yeah, there's some amazing apps too that allow you mindfulness, and there's one that allows you to put your favorite picture up on the app, and then it turns it into a puzzle, and you have to assemble it into a picture of your favorite people.
Mhm.
I'm gonna figure out what that is and put that in the breakout, because that app has just been amazing. Um, anyway, next question while I'm looking for that.
Yeah, right now, actually, I have a question. I guess, you know, we talk a lot about like the anxiety and realizing it in and feeling it and all that, but like, what about the anxiety that just kind of like leaves you with like deer in the headlights, and you're kind of like in that moment, what do I do? What do
Uh,
you do with that?
um, I was just trying to figure out how to send that, and it seems like I can only send it to Talene. It's called Virtual Hope Box, that app
Okay,
that I was
I
to
can
send
type it
that out
in.
to everyone. But you were saying sometimes you get so stuck in an emotion that you're a deer in the headlights and you can't do anything, right?
Yeah.
The best thing to do in that situation is to take a few minutes to sit with that emotion and really just focus in on the emotion. It's really funny when I was learning to rollerblade way back in the 90s, right? Your inclination when you're rollerblading, when you get off balance, is to go, whoa, right? And then what happens? You fall way back and hit your head, right? But when you learn to rollerblade, you go and actually take a lesson. The first thing they teach you is how to brake. And the second thing they teach you is when you feel out of balance, go down, go into your center. So emotionally, I think those two things are true too. When you're feeling off balance, when you're feeling like you're a deer in the headlights, you need to go into your center. And you need to really, that's why I think I like that staircase, the inner staircase, because it helps you walk down inside yourself and say, what am I feeling and what am I thinking?
Yeah.
Um,
No, absolutely. No, thank you. And just we have like 1 minute, but I'm gonna ask you this: how do you balance if your feelings are circumstantial versus side effect of treatment? So hormone suppressive versus requiring higher level of support medication.
So, right, you don't always know, right? So you have to kind of do both things. You have to pay attention to your emotions, and you have to ask your doctor. You don't always know why what you're feeling. Is it your symptoms? Is this something to be concerned about? Maybe we can lower our medication. Maybe we can change the medication we're taking if the symptoms are too painful. And maybe the symptoms you're feeling aren't a part of the medication, and you would feel that way just because you're struggling with the whole cancer process. I feel sad that we ran out of time. I really hoped that I could, have a real conversation with all of you. I'm humbled by you guys showing up, and please feel free to email me, reach out, talk to me further. I'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to wrap up, just be sure to visit the exhibit hall, and then join us back at 8 for a hangout and opportunity to chat with your peers. I put the summit link in there, and it was wonderful to have all of you. And thank you, Joy, again for being here and for this wonderful session.
Thank you.